Hello, I'm Cozy, and today I want to show you more than 20 ways you can take your build from this to this. Real quick before I start, I'm about to say stuff like add a chimney, add some windows, and although those things do usually help a build, I kinda hate giving simple black and white advice like that, and so I wanted to briefly mention the major things that I think of before I add small individual things like that. Everything I'm adding in my head falls under shape, texture, and details. I can go over these things more in depth in a future video if anyone would be interested, but for now just keep in mind that these are the major things that you can have in your head to improve your builds. Anyways, jumping straight into it, I'm going to add a stable to help with the shape, but also to add a little personality to the build. And also, for a secret third reason, I love horses in this game, and I think everybody should, and so I think everybody should be forced a horse on them. I get pretty nervous recording these things, and so I end up talking a lot, and so I thought that we could have some perfect little peaceful moments of silence while I build. That's done. The next thing that I think is a good place to focus on is the roof. I really love adding a lot of character to roofs, and I think the roof does a lot of that heavy lifting for a building. And so it's pretty easy to get away with a lot of stuff in your building as long as you make the roof really interesting, in my opinion. So, roof time. I'm going to add a little bit of an overhang here. I think you could definitely leave it flush if you'd like this, all flat, but I don't like, so I'm making it an overhang. Alright, already to me that extra depth adds a lot to the building. I think it's really nice. That's a good amount. But I'm not done there yet for the roof. I think I would like to add a little bit more to this slope. Yeah, one more. I think that'll look really nice. Alright, bam, there we go. So that's done. I think the roof is already looking like 15 times better. Oh, it's really cool. That slope is looking great. I'm a big fan of that shape that's created there. And it adds a good amount of depth as well. Now we're still focusing on the roof. I'm gonna add some dormers. If you don't know what dormers are, they are the little like poke out bits in a roof here. I imagine that, you know, and there's like a little window. That's what a dormer is. I'm gonna add a bunch of dormers real quick because those are awesome, and those also help with the shape of a build. So yeah, dormer time. So the dormers are done. Actually, I don't exactly know if this is technically a dormer, but it is a thing that comes out on the roof and adds shape, so mission accomplished. I did this one here, nice big one. Adds a lot, I think, to this front face of the building. I also went in down here and changed out some of these planks for a stair. Because I think it just adds that little bit extra depth and interest. It helps separate it, and it just looks really nice in my opinion. And then back here, these are probably more like if any of these were dormers, these are definitely dormers. These are like little dormers. But yeah, I also did the little stair thing here. I'm gonna come back and touch these up a little bit more at a later step, but yeah, those are dormers. Still, for the next tip, we're still on the roof, and I'm going to do something fancy up here on the top. I'm going to give it just a little bit more shape, give it a very interesting element and silhouette. I think doing a fun like pattern on the top of a roof is one, a super easy way to improve your builds, and two, a really fun way to give your build a lot of like character and personality. Literally do whatever you want, you know, just have fun with it, and that's what I'm about to do. Alright, so check it out. I did a fun little roof thing here. I really like doing little things like this on a roof. I think it adds so much, not just to the silhouette, but also to the general feel of a build, you know? It's just like all these really fun, intricate little shapes that we have going on with all these different blocks that add a lot to a build. So first I'll start here. I brought out the roof just by one right here, and then I did a wall to help transition it to the rest of the roof where it has this overhang. And then I just did this one little guy right here sticking out to add just that extra little bit of like, boop, like slope, you know what I mean? Going off to the side on both sides. And then up here, something I really like to do is combine the walls with the fence gates because they combine really, really well. And it's got this nice like stair effect, like doop, 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 up, down, you know, super nice. And then I went ahead and I did iron bars on a few of these, candles on top of all of them. And then I did this slope in the middle here, you know, using the cauldrons and anvils, some of my favorite blocks to use. I really love cauldrons and anvils. They've got really, really nice shapes. And so it goes up and then back down. Really, really fun curve right here. And then these copper rods are here for a little bit of a punch of color, but mainly because of the silhouette they add, this little bulb. I feel like it's a really nice transition from the fence to the bar. But if you don't like that bulb, I would just do the bar and the fence, because then it's just like a smooth taper. Oh, and then I capped everything with candles because it's fun. And I personally really like to light all of the candles, because why not? You know, I think it looks pretty. So it doesn't really make much like logical sense, but I like it. And that's the most important thing, I think. So yeah, that is done. What's next? Oh, the entryway. That's going to be the next tip. Right now, I'm thinking that this build is really left heavy because these two are on the left side here. It's not very balanced. I think it's pretty empty on the right side. So I'm going to take the entryway. I'm going to put it on the right over here. And then I think the entryway is a really important part of your build because it's where you're coming in and out the most. It's kind of like the focal point of a build. It's like the face of a house, you know? It's like where you look. That's a horrible way of explaining it. Not really. It's an okay way of explaining it. It is important, is what I'm trying to say. And so I'm going to place it over here, and I'm going to do some stuff that I think is going to emphasize it and make it feel grand, but not too grand. This isn't like a mansion or anything. It could be if I wanted it to be, but I don't. So I don't want it to be that insanely elegant. I just want it to feel appealing and like it's drawing you in. So yeah, I'm going to do that now. Okay, cool. That's our entryway done in record time. I have the world record for that now. I will be rewarded for such, I demand. So this is done. This is cute and fun. I like to set the door back, right? So let me actually do an example real quick. You can do a door like that, boring, yuck. Or like this, awesome, not yuck. So that's cool. That's first and foremost. So I did that, but I also like it to be a little bit bigger because just being this is small and I don't like that. Especially for a build this size. I mean, you could get away with it sometimes, I guess, but not me. I don't like it. So I made it a little bigger by taking the trapdoors here, and they're kind of like more door. You know what I mean? It just blends in with the texture, so it's nice. And then I did these stairs right here to give a nice arch, and I did that by putting trapdoors behind the stairs back here. You can't really notice it. If you look very close, you can, so don't look very close. I don't want you to. But yeah, you can't really tell, and that is awesome. So this is the general bare bones of what I want the door to be like already. I feel like it kind of draws you in. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, there's the door. And it already helps to balance things out much better, in my opinion. But it's still missing a lot. This is kind of just the foundation of door. So I'm actually going to add a couple of little details super quick. Detailing is going to be a bigger overarching tip later in the video, but right now, for the sake of things, this is going to be its own tip, detailing your door. So first off, little hanging sign, that's too low. Is that good? That's good. I like that area. Hanging signs are awesome, and I haven't used them very much in my builds yet, and I would like to use them more. So do a little hanging sign, write whatever you'd like, you know, it can be the name of your build. Give your name a build, that's another tip. Naming your build is really cool. But other thing as well is add a little light. I think adding a little light next to your door is one, realistic, because like that's where you're going in and out of. If you were living in this world or whatever, you would need a little light for when it's dark. You know what I mean? To like see your keys and your lock and stuff. So it's realistic, but it also helps with the whole like focal point thing, you know, if it was nighttime, and then like depending on where we put the rest of the lights, the light would kind of draw you in here. It's kind of highlighting it, like almost literally. So there's that. But that's not all. I'm going to do one more thing. This is the next tip. You can add a little like awning to your builds. I'm gonna add a little awning over this door. I think that's super nice for like if it's raining or something. It just feels really really cute. So doing that now. All right, awesome. Awning is done. These are so cute. I really love these things, and I like to add them in any build that I can. And so I definitely think that they fit well for a house. The next sort of tip kind of already goes in line with the awning that I just built, and that's you kind of want to do this before you start building, so it's a little out of order, I'm sorry, but you want to choose a general color palette for your builds. I like to stay pretty neutral. I mean, there's a little bit of orange with the copper rods up there, but that doesn't really count, ignore it. I like to stay generally neutral when I start building and then decide the colors later because I'm really indecisive. And so before I added this, it was all neutral, just browns, whites, and blacks. But I decided with this to go with a little bit of red and green. One, because they're nice pops of color, and two, because they're complementary, red and green. They go very well together. And I'm a big fan of doing a lot of overgrowth like on my buildings, and so this gives me the opportunity to do a ton of green on my roof and stuff. And so yeah, so that's cool. What is the next thing I want to add? Let me think. I think I'm going to go in and refine the shape some more. So the next tip here is to help blend all of your different elements. So these three different segments, they kind of come to this abrupt stop in all these areas. I'm going to do a better job of combining them more, making it feel more like this home is constructed and they're all a part of each other. All right, so I feel like this does a pretty good job of getting across what I was trying to explain in connecting these different tiers. So all I did here was I added stairs on every other block, basically. I'll start up here actually, that's a little bit simpler. So I brought down the log by 1, and then I put a little fence on the bottom to help taper it just a little bit. A wall would actually do a little bit better of a job here. I broke something. No, what'd I break? Okay. So let me do a wall and then a fence. Yeah, I like that better. So I think I like it better. 1 second. Yeah, I do like it better. And here are the reasons why. I will explain now. 1, better taper. Good taper is a good, so I like that. And then 2, the lighter sort of pinker tones that are in the mud brick help bring in the pinker tones that exist in the jungle wood as well. I think they work well together, and it helps kind of just bring everything in together more. So anyways, I brought down the log by 1, did a mud brick, and then did a fence to help taper it. And then here on this main level of divide, I just did every other block a stair. And then I did, on each side it's symmetrical, I did a slab and then 2 trapdoors. And that gives it this really, really subtle sort of curve going on. And I did that basically on each side here. This side, since it's smaller, I only did 1 slab and 1 trapdoor, you know? And then the same goes for down here. The only difference is that I added these trapdoors on the bottom to help drag down this sort of support system more. In my head, it makes sense. It's like, this is where the bulk of the support needs to be. This is transitioning from the foundation to the more intricate structure of the entire house. And so here we want a bulkier support that has more going on. And so I think that helps convey that idea right there. It's like bam, you know what I mean? And then over here, I just added these. These are more decorative in my opinion. You know, if I'm thinking about it as like a support system, these might add a little bit more structure, but really they're just kind of like these corner flourishes, and they help to bring just a little bit more contrast within these areas and help break things up a little bit more. So yeah, there's that. Maybe, just maybe, it could be a good idea to add a few more things. You have to be careful because you can get really messy and cluttered really, really quickly. So this looks kind of good from the front. I think I actually like that a good amount, but from the side it might not look as great. Looks a little bit weird. I actually think I like it, so I'm gonna go ahead and add it everywhere. I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me slow down real quick. The next thing I wanted to do, the main thing that I have in mind, I love doing this, is I do chain and then pot, and then I add a fern, because the fern connects to the chain at the top there, I just think that's a lot of fun. I think it's really nice and it's a really cute detail. So yeah, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna add these little curve thingies and then those little pots. That is done. I think it's really cute, honestly, this extra little curve thing with the trapdoors and the slabs. And then of course I love my little potted plant thing, super cute. But yeah, so that is done for that. I think for the next tip, I'm actually going to tackle a really big part of the build. It's probably the biggest thing that'll make a difference other than shape, and that is texturing. I'm going to texture all of the different surfaces that we have right now, so the roof and the walls and blah blah blah, whatever. I'm gonna texture them all, and then I think it's going to make it a little bit easier to add all the details later. Well, actually, it'll be a little harder to add the details, but I think it's going to be nice, and it works for my brain, so this is a really big, awesome thing that you can do for your builds. Make sure you texture them. I'm going to texture and shade at the same time. I'll explain how I think of it and what I typically do once I'm done with it, so that I can kind of show you more visually what it is that I've done. Okay, so this is kind of the first part of the whole texturing thing. In my opinion, the way I think of it, it's kind of split into 3 parts. There's the defining of like what your surface actually looks like. Then there's the like texturing part of it, like adding in like you look at it and you feel like you could feel what it looks like, just texture, you know? And then there's the shading part where you change out your blocks depending on like how you want people to imagine light is being cast onto it. And so I did the first part here. This is kind of just defining the surface. I just brought in like these support beams, you know, I split up the general shape that exists here. And now I can come in later. I can do all my details with windows and like all the extra little like shapes that I want to create and stuff. But now I have it divided so that I can come in and texture it with like actual texture, you know, give it like a more of like a feel, so it's not all just the same block. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, that took a while, but texturing done. I think, like I said before, this is like the biggest thing that you can do to make a massive change in your build, other than play with like the shape arrangements and stuff and the general silhouette. And I think that I'm right, because this looks pretty different and pretty crazy. So I'll just run through everything right now. I still have to do the shading. I mean, I've kinda done a little bit of shading, but I'm gonna do more, and that's gonna be the next thing. But let me just run through all this real quick. So anytime that I'm texturing, I don't like to just throw down blocks randomly. You can if you want, and if that's what you like, that's cool, but I think that it doesn't look that great most of the time. I think it almost always looks better when you go into it with intention, and so that's what I always try to do. So in the foundation layer, something that I always really like to do is to start with moss at the bottom, as if it's like overgrown, you know, these are like vines and stuff like that. Actually, one thing that I just thought of that is going to make this a lot better, this can be part of the details, I'll come back to this, but these pale moss carpets do this really cool transition. Ooh, I love that. Okay, I'll come back to that, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. So I like to start with moss on the bottom to act like it's like overgrowth, and then I do a gradient from there. So usually I'll do moss and then tuff and then mossy cobble, so go like this, you know, and typically these two should be next to each other, but I like to throw the tuff in there just because it breaks it up a little bit in a way that I find really interesting, and it, in my opinion, adds this kind of subtle shading that might exist, a little bit of like a divot, you know, from the moss to the rest of the stone. So anyways, I do that. I really like this dead coral block because it looks kind of like big chunky stones, and I also made sure to include it because it has a lot of warm tones in it, which helps with the red and the jungle planks, so I thought that it would be a good fit. Then we do cobblestone, then stone, and then just barely a tiny little bit of stone brick all the way up there. And so yeah, I like to go from the bottom to the top, gradient like this. It's not a very smooth gradient necessarily, but it's what I chose, and I think the intention is what matters. And so that's what I've done down here. Then with all of the support, I changed out the majority of the oak logs for spruce logs. I think just having a few of the oak, sometimes it looks a little messy in my opinion, so sometimes I'm indecisive and I don't really want it. But most of the time, the idea is that it's just this extra rough part of the wood, you know, from a lot of weathering and stuff. So I think that's pretty nice. The walls here, I usually like to do a lot of calcite with polished diorite and diorite. Polished adds a little bit more of structure and reinforcement in my opinion, and the regular diorite is kind of like, it's been a little smashed, it's kind of worn and weathered down. But I also included here some of this mushroom stem and just a tiny bit of the white terracotta that adds that warmth again, tying things together. It's a block that I don't typically use, but I think works well with this build, with all the colors that I had in mind. And so I did that up there as if it's like some worn like plaster, and then the mushroom stems are acting a little bit like grime that's coming off of that. That's how I'm perceiving it, and that's how I thought of it. And so when I'm doing all of this texturing, it's with that in mind. I don't want to do too much, you know, but just in some areas. I like to imagine if the build existed in real life and think about like what kind of weathering and texturing might happen like over time. And I also try to keep in mind that a lot of these themes in real life that exist, like whether it's just a landscape in nature or it's like a building or something, they're not always perfect. I mean, they might be as soon as like right after they're built, but typically there's some weathering or something that happens where it might not look super visually appealing. So I kind of tell myself that to not get too caught up in the little details, and to remember that it's okay for it to be kind of imperfect and for it to look a little ugly sometimes. This thing, this is kind of a little bit of shading more than it is texturing. I'm thinking of it as like some light hitting here, but it's also texturing because I'm thinking of it as being like kind of worn and weathered. And so it's the oak going into the jungle, going into the spruce, and this is kind of this warm transition. A lot of time when light hits something, not always wood, you know, it depends on the surface, but if it's a really strong warm light hitting something, if you look at the transition between the light and then the not lit up, you know, the part that's lit and the part that's not lit, a lot of the time there's this little transition between the two, and it's this really strong saturated like orange or something. It depends on the light, but I like to keep that in mind. And so it's just an extra thing that I think that you can do when you're building. I didn't incorporate it everywhere, you know, but sometimes I think it's good to keep in mind. Okay, and then finally here we have the roof. It's a little bit messy, but I think it works pretty well. I like it a lot. So this is actually the gradient down here that I have. Again, not a super smooth gradient because I decided to throw this guy in here. I love this texture. So we're going from this really dark with the tiles to the bricks to the cobbled deep slate, and then here's the new wood. What's it called? The pale wood. And then tough, pale moss, mossy cobble, and moss. And so that's the transition I got going. It's going from dark to light, and then this is like mega worn, mega overgrown. And so I have it over here. We've got kind of dark, and then it's kind of getting lighter and overgrown, more overgrown up here. And I'm using the pale wood here as the terminator, kind of as that transition between the light and the dark. By throwing in that extra punch of color or saturation. And I picked that one especially or specifically because one, I love the texture, it's really pretty, but two, because it has a tiny bit of like red or purple in it, and again that fits with this red idea that we've been going with for the build. So I did that on both sides here. Pretty simple, you know. I didn't spend too long on refining it super perfectly, but yeah, that is the general shading for everything. Oh, I almost forgot up here as well. I went ahead and I added some trapdoors. This falls more into the detailing stage of the build, which I'll do in a bit, but I'm using it less as details and more as texturing because it comes out a little bit, but there's not a lot of blocks that I can use that I want to use, I should say, that are the same as spruce wood. I really like throwing in the trapdoors here, and it kind of feels a little bit like it's been repaired, you know, or maybe barricaded or something. It's just an extra little touch, and it does actually help a little bit with the shading part of texturing, which is what I'm about to do, because it's a little bit darker, you know, and it's almost like this overhang is casting a tiny little shadow. But yeah, so there's that. I'm going to do the shading now, finally, the real shading, so be right back. All right, done. So it's pretty tiny and subtle. It's pretty little, but I think it makes a huge impact, especially when you're looking from far away. So here's what I did to just add a little bit of shading. There's a ton of different ways that you can go about this, and like I said, I already kind of did it a little bit with the texturing that I was doing earlier. So yeah, there's a million different ways that you can shade, but this is a pretty simple way that I like to do it that doesn't really overwhelm me ever. So we've got the 3 different segments of the build, and so I'm having each one kind of cast a shadow onto the next. And so I went in here and I replaced all of the spruce and oak logs with mangrove logs. I think they look like a really nice, like, shaded version of the log. And so that's really nice. And then I did the same thing over here, where the roof overhangs it too. I think it adds a lot. It's right there as well. And then I also added in some of these fence gates. Oh, I forgot one right here. Because I think that just adds a little bit extra of the that shaded feeling. So that's super cool. I really like that. It looks nice. And then I did the same thing down here, but instead of using darker blocks, I just switched them out for stairs. So then there's that extra little divot. You know what I mean? And so I think that helps reinforce that feeling of like, oh, shade, you know, because it's just a little bit darker. That's all you need, I think. It's not something that someone's going to stare at like super close or intently very often. It's kind of just like a general feel that you get when you're looking from a distance. It's like, oh, that's a little bit darker. It looks like this is poking out and casting a shadow there. You can do this in really fun and creative ways with a completely flat building too, just by going crazy with texturing if you really know what you're doing. And that's awesome. That's like really fun and really good practice if you feel like doing it. But I really like having this extra little bit of depth. I think it looks really good, and so that's how I like to build, and it's how I'm going to build. I did the same thing up here with the dormers a little bit. It's a little wonky because of how these things come down, but that's not that big of a deal. I think it still sells the idea very well. And then with these guys, there wasn't enough space to put a mangrove log because, you know, that's just, I don't like that. So I did a stair instead where the gap is on the top, and so it looks like, bam, darker shadow. So yeah, I did that. That is awesome. It looks great. I love it. And so now I'm gonna do my favorite thing. I'm gonna work on windows finally. That is the next tip, the next way that you can improve your builds. Add windows. Windows are awesome. They can look really cool. They add a lot of interest to the different faces of your building, and they're just a lot of fun to look out of. So I'm adding windows now. Alright, we got windows now. I got a little bit ahead of myself and started doing a little bit of detailing on the windows, but I had self-control and I only did windows really. So here's a little bit of an open window here in this dormer. I like that, super cute. And then here's all the general windows. I added these shutters like this. That one doesn't work, and neither does that one. But I like when you can close it like that. You're probably never going to. It's really nice for these little one windows. You're probably never actually going to, but I just think it's such a cute little detail when you can actually close it like that. So there's that. Over here we have more windows, but these ones have little shelves that you can put stuff on, which I'm going to when I start detailing soon. But yeah, that is it. Windows are in place. Oh, I did these nice big circle ones on the side. I think those are really nice. They add a lot to the build. Okay, detailing time. Now that windows are done, I'm gonna start detailing like crazy. A bunch of little details. Here I go. Alright, I've detailed to my heart's content. I've detailed like crazy. So let me show you. You can definitely detail way more than what I've done. But I think this step of the process, I mean, this kind of goes in line with all of the steps in the process, is that you just do it as much as you want to. You know what I mean? Do it until you're happy. And so these are all the little details that I added. I added more fence gates all in here. They just add a little bit more interest right here. They change up the shape of the block just a little bit. And I think they add just a little bit more shading as well. You know, they bring down the shadows just a little bit. And so it's not much, but I think it adds a lot. Over here I added potted plants. I did some mushrooms and stuff. I picked plants that I felt like stayed in line with the color scheme of the build, but also the feeling that I want to invoke for the build. So I thought mushrooms were very nice and like cozy, but also kind of like fantastical, you know. And then I just really loved the lily of the valley, so that's what I did there. Also with the potted plants, I like to sometimes remove one of the windows, as if you have the window open so that the plant can get fresh air even though it's outside. So it doesn't really make sense. Actually, I think it'd be better if I put the plant in here, and then that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, just little tiny touches of love like that for your build, I think go a very, very long way. More plants over here, and then I added these little work areas out here. So this is just a crafting table and some chests and some pots and some barrels, all just like thrown up onto the landscape. They're just here. You know what I mean? And so you can do that for sure if you want to. I want to put my favorite flowers. I like to put my favorite flowers here on the bottom. I'm actually going to do this and that and that. And where's the other one I like a lot? Here it is. Okay. So my favorite little, my favorite flowers go in the favorite spot right here. I also added a lot of these hanging moss and hanging roots around, just to add a little bit more of that feeling of like, oh, this stuff is like old and overgrown. And then I also threw a lot of this pale moss carpet up here to help blend a little bit more of these transitions. Actually, it could work pretty well up here. If you didn't know, sometimes there's a chance of it being too high. You just have to keep trying. And so I wanted it too high right there, and so I got it. Actually, no, I want the too high on the other side. Gimme, gimme, gimme. There we go. Nope. Perfect. But yeah, that is super cool. I love that little bit of texture. I also put one right here, and maybe I'll make it a too high. Let me see, do I like it too high? I actually do, but I think I want the one high more for this area. But yeah, so those are all the little details that I've added. Like I said before, you could do way more than what I did, or way less. It's whatever you like, you know? Just think of little things that you think would be cute to add to it. Think of little things that might be fun to have in it if you lived in that house. You can get a lot of inspiration online, like on Pinterest and stuff. You kind of just see what like other people do, and it can give you a lot of good ideas for what you want to do yourself. I'm going to go ahead and add one of my favorite things to add in buildings. I can't believe I forgot about it earlier. It completely slipped my mind. I'm gonna add a chimney. I love adding chimneys to builds, even if it doesn't totally make sense, or there's like not always a kitchen or a furnace or something like that. Chimneys are just awesome. So I'm gonna do that now. Alright, chimney is added. I did these tiny little skinny ones right here. I'm a big fan of doing just tiny little skinny chimneys like this. A lot of fun. Really cute. I kept the composition in mind, the arrangement of elements. You know, we've got these two things down here on the left, on the right, you know, the entrance. And then we come up here. There's nothing necessarily like catching our eye in the middle here, you know, so it can kind of drift up to this next major like element. So we kind of have this going on, you know, as for the flow. And then this was pretty empty. Having rest areas in your build is pretty important. And so I was kind of back and forth on whether I wanted to add something here or not, but I think it still works for sure. You know, it helps carry it up right there. And so yeah, that's pretty nice. That's why I added the chimneys right there. They maybe could be moved one block to the left. I'm not totally sure, but it's fine. It's not that big of a deal, and it still looks really nice in my opinion. Ooh, especially from the side, I like that a lot. But anyways, here's what I do. I texture it with a little bit of granite, you know, to add that worn feeling. I like to change some of them for stairs, so there's these gaps, they feel really like rickety, you know, really like broken. And then on the campfire, I put all these trapdoors around it so you don't see ugly campfire from the ground. And then I put an anvil on top because it adds this nice silhouette, this nice shape. I'm actually going to turn this anvil to the side because I want it to be nice and skinny like that. This does two things though. It does the silhouette like I was talking about, the shape, but it also catches a lot of this smoke so that up here, I added another thing of trapdoors just because it looks nice. Up here, only a little bit of the smoke gets through. So it's not this crazy like billowing like smoke tower. It's just a few little puffs of smoke coming out every now and again, which I think works really, really well and looks really, really nice when you're just doing like a simple little home or like a cottage or something like that. I think that's the general gist of what I wanted to get across and what I wanted to share though. There's a million more things that you could be doing if you'd like. There's a lot that you could be doing with terraforming, which I haven't even touched at all. A big thing that you can do to improve your builds is to add some sort of like terrain around it. You know, you could build like a custom tree, or you could maybe like just build like a hill or something like that. There's a lot of different things like that that I really did not want to get too crazy into for this video. I think this video is already going to be a lot longer than I was planning. So in the future, maybe I'll make a video like that where I go over all the terraforming that you can do to improve your builds. But for the most part, for this build, I would say it's complete. It's complete to me. And so I'm really happy with it. This is the this has been a bunch of stuff that you can do to improve your build. I'm not really sure how many things exactly. I wasn't keeping count. But yeah, if you're still here, if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this video helped in some sort of way, or at the very least you liked the build or something. If you did like the build, or you liked me, or like my videos, whatever, go ahead and feel free to leave a like or subscribe or anything like that. I would super appreciate it. I plan on making more videos like this in the future very soon, so I look forward to that. And if you have any video ideas or recommendations, you can go ahead and leave a comment or something. I would love to know what you guys would like to see me do. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I hope this video helped in any sort of way. Goodbye.